There are moments in life when the world feels unbearably heavy, and there are moments when a single unexpected gesture lights up all that darkness. This story begins on a cold, windy weekday morning when people hurried through Greenwood Park with coffee cups and briefcases, unaware that just behind a row of benches, a life was quietly falling apart. And on that very morning, when everything seemed hopeless, a small voice uttered the words that would rewrite a broken woman's destiny. It happened in daylight, under the warmth of a rising sun that didn't know how many silent tears had dried in its glow. A little girl paused beside a shivering stranger and said something so simple, yet so powerful, that time seemed to stop. She looked at the woman who was curled into herself as though protecting her own heart, and said, "I think you need a hug. Can I hug you?" And in that single sentence, the world changed. If you believe in kindness, in second chances, and in the power of human connection, then please take a moment to like, comment, share, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness Stories. Your support encourages more life-changing stories like this one to reach others who need hope. Her name was Mara Soling. Once a preschool teacher, once a woman who loved baking strawberry scones, once someone who laughed easily, she was now homeless. Life had stripped her down piece by piece over the last 2 years. It began when her mother passed away unexpectedly, leaving behind medical bills that Mara had no means to handle. She tried balancing extra jobs, tried cutting expenses, tried everything she could, but sometimes life knocks harder than expected. Then, when the daycare she worked at shut down, she lost her only stable income. A few months later, her landlord raised the rent, and her savings dwindled until one morning she woke up without a home. She carried her life in an old backpack and tried to keep her dignity even as each day chipped away at the strength she once believed was unbreakable. The park had become her daytime refuge because it was safer than the crowded shelters where her few belongings risked being stolen. Every morning, she sat on the same far-left bench, wearing the same worn-out brown coat she had found in a donation bin months earlier. She used to feel embarrassed sitting there, watching families, students, office workers, and tourists move freely with purpose while she felt trapped in a life that no longer had direction. But after months of being invisible, shame had turned into numbness. She had learned how to disappear within crowds, how to pretend she wasn't hungry when her stomach twisted painfully, how to accept passing glances that judged her without knowing a single thing about her. That morning, the sky was crisp blue, scattered with small clouds that moved slowly as if time itself was tired. Children played across the park field, their laughter echoing in the wind, while parents stood nearby chatting. Birds hopped across the grass, searching for crumbs. The world was alive, vibrant, and full of energy, and yet Mara felt like a ghost passing through it. She had slept poorly under the bus shelter the night before, barely getting 2 hours of rest due to the cold. Her hands were stiff, and her face felt tight from the windburn. She sat hunched over, trying to stay warm, rubbing her hands together out of instinct. She didn't expect anything to change. She didn't expect anyone to notice her. She didn't expect a miracle, but miracles often arrive quietly. Across the park, a little girl named Raina Calder was skipping ahead of her mother, swinging a small yellow bag as she hummed a tune. Raina was 6 years old, known for her bright green scarf, curly brown hair, and a heart so soft that she cried when cartoon characters were sad. Her mother, Laura, kept a watchful eye as they walked toward the playground. Raina was full of energy and curiosity, often asking questions about everything she saw. But today, she wasn't asking questions. Today, something simply pulled her toward that lonely bench. Mara noticed the little girl approaching, though she tried not to stare. She didn't want to frighten the child or attract the mother's suspicion. She lowered her gaze to her lap, hoping they would pass by like everyone else. But small, determined footsteps stopped right in front of her. Mara lifted her eyes slowly, expecting to see fear or confusion, but the girl's eyes were filled with an innocent kindness she hadn't seen in years. And then came the words that shook her completely. The girl leaned in slightly, as if recognizing a pain she couldn't name, and softly said she thought the woman needed a hug. She asked if she could hug her. The world fell silent. For a moment, Mara couldn't breathe. Nobody had hugged her in months. Nobody had looked at her with kindness, let alone offered physical warmth. And now, a child, someone untouched by the harsher realities of the world, was offering the one thing she needed most, a human connection. She didn't know how to respond. A part of her felt unworthy. Another part feared the mother would pull the child away. Another part wanted to cry so loudly that the whole world would hear. But Raina didn't wait for permission. She gently wrapped her small arms around Mara, hugging her with a purity that only children possess. It wasn't a hesitant hug. It wasn't out of pity. It was full of warmth, sincerity, and innocence. Mara felt her body tighten at first, her breath trembling as the embrace caught her off guard. But slowly her shoulders relaxed, her heart softened, and tears began streaming down her face. She didn't sob loudly. She cried silently, feeling something break open inside her chest. She felt seen. She felt human. Laura stood nearby, stunned for a moment. But instead of pulling her daughter away, she watched something beautiful unfold. When Raina stepped back, She held Mara's hand for a moment before running back to her mother. Laura approached Mara gently after a moment, asking softly if she was all right. Mara wiped her tears quickly, embarrassed, but Laura didn't show judgment. Instead, she showed concern, kindness, and a warm understanding that felt rare these days. Laura learned that Mara had been homeless for months. She learned that she once taught children, loved her job, and lost everything through a series of unfortunate events. Laura felt something stir in her heart, a deep urge to help, not out of pity but out of respect for a woman who had endured so much with quiet resilience. She invited Mara for a warm meal at a nearby cafe, insisting gently when Mara hesitated. That small gesture opened a door Mara never expected to walk through. That afternoon, for the first time in nearly a year, Mara ate a warm bowl of soup on a proper table, surrounded by people who didn't stare at her with suspicion. Reina talked excitedly about her favorite books and how she wanted to be a doctor when she grew up. Mara listened with a soft smile, feeling her heart thaw with every passing minute. She felt warmth in places she thought had frozen forever. But the story doesn't end with a meal. Laura offered to help Mara find temporary housing through a local assistance program. It wasn't easy. There were forms, waiting lists, and slow-moving procedures. But Laura didn't let Mara go through it alone. She stood by her side through every step, helping her navigate the overwhelming process. Within 2 weeks, Mara moved into a small transitional housing unit. It wasn't luxurious, but it had a bed, a heater, and a door that locked. For her, it was paradise. Reina visited often, bringing drawings and homemade cookies. She called Mara her park friend, and the bond between them grew into something profound. Laura helped Mara reconnect with former colleagues who eventually guided her toward a new job opportunity at a community learning center. It wasn't the preschool she used to work at, but it was close enough. She got to be around children again, guiding them, teaching them, feeling purposeful. Months passed, and with each one, Mara's life rebuilt itself piece by piece. Her cheeks slowly regained color, her eyes regained shine, and her spirit regained strength. She saved money, bought new clothes, and even started painting again, something she loved but had abandoned during her hardest years. She began to smile more, laugh more, and hope more. One spring morning, Mara stood in the same park where she once felt invisible, but now she stood differently. She stood upright, confident, and alive. The sun warmed her face as she watched Reina race across the grass with a kite, laughing the same laugh that once saved her. She realized how one hug had become a lifeline, how one child's compassion had rewritten her fate, how one moment of connection had reminded her she was still worthy of love, kindness, and a future. And so, to every viewer listening to this story, if this journey touched your heart even a little, please take a moment to engage with this video. Like it, share it, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to Touch of Kindness Stories. Your interaction helps more people discover stories of hope and restoration, stories that remind us of the power of kindness. Before we close this story, here is a special request. Please comment below with the words, "Kindness can change lives," to spread the message far and wide. Mara's story is proof that hope can appear in the smallest gestures. A warm smile, a gentle touch, a child's simple instinct to care. Sometimes, the smallest acts create the biggest miracles. And sometimes, a single hug can change a life forever.